All right, in this explainer, we're going underground. We're going to tackle one of the most misunderstood and, frankly, one of the deadliest risks on any job site: the invisible atmospheric hazards in confined spaces. Because what you can't see, what you can't smell or feel, well, that can be the most dangerous thing you'll ever encounter.
60%. Just look at that number for a second. Let it sink in. It represents a heartbreaking tragedy that just keeps repeating itself on work sites everywhere. And trust me, it's probably not what you think.
That's right. The majority of people who die are the rescuers. They see a coworker go down, and that instinct, that human need to help, it just takes over. So they rush in. No testing, no equipment, because the space looks fine. There's no smoke, no obvious warning smell. But the atmosphere inside is a silent killer. And by the time you actually feel its effects, it's already far, far too late.
Okay, so let's break this down. Here's our game plan. First, we're going to define what actually makes the space confined according to OSHA. Then, we're going to meet the 3 invisible killers that lurk in these atmospheres. After that, we'll cover the only reliable way to see them, and we'll come back to that deadly rescuer's instinct. And finally, we'll walk through the single most important piece of paper that will save your life: the entry permit.
So, first things first. The term confined space isn't just some casual description. It actually has a very specific, very important legal meaning under OSHA. And getting this definition right is the absolute foundation for staying safe.
OSHA breaks it down into 3 simple criteria. If a space checks all 3 boxes, it's a confined space. Number 1, is it big enough for a person to get inside and do a job? Simple enough. Number 2, is it hard to get into or out of? Think of a manhole, a tank with just one ladder, or a long, narrow pipe. And number 3, was it built for people to just hang out in all day? The answer is almost always hard no.
Now, this is where things get really serious. We have what's called a permit-required confined space. This is any confined space that has at least one of 4 major hazards. The first one, and our main focus today, is the potential for a hazardous atmosphere. The others include being buried or engulfed by material like grain or sand, having a shape that could physically trap you, or any other serious hazard, like live electrical parts. If any of those are present, you cannot enter without a formal permit, period.
And these spaces are all around us. We're talking about the sewers and manholes under our streets, giant storage tanks at refineries, grain silos on farms, underground utility vaults, industrial boilers, you name it. Every single one has its own unique dangers. But the one thing they all share is the potential for an atmosphere that simply cannot support human life.
So let's talk about that atmosphere. Because when you peer into a vault or a tank, it looks like it's just full of, well, nothing, just air. But that seemingly empty space can be hiding 3 types of invisible killers, and each one is ready to strike without any warning that your senses can possibly detect. So, what are they? These killers fall into 3 main categories: an atmosphere that doesn't have enough oxygen to support life, one that's ready to explode, and one that is an outright poison. Let's meet the first one. Oxygen deficiency is maybe the most deceptive hazard of them all. It's a silent thief. It doesn't cause pain. It doesn't make you choke or gasp for air. It has no smell, no color. It just steals your consciousness. One good breath of air with severely low oxygen, and you can pass out instantly, with 0 time to even realize something is wrong.
Just look at how razor thin this margin of safety is. The air we're all breathing right now is about 21% oxygen. OSHA says the absolute minimum for safe entry is 19.5%. That's it. And look how fast things fall apart below that. You dip below 16% and your judgment is already shot. You might not even realize you're in danger. Below 10%, you pass out. And at 6% or less, death can come in a matter of minutes.
So where does all the oxygen go? Well, it can be literally eaten up by natural processes, like bacteria decomposing waste in a sewer. Even the slow rusting of the metal walls of a tank consumes oxygen. Or it can just be pushed out, displaced, by other gases seeping in, like nitrogen or methane. Heck, even running a gas-powered pump or a welder in a small space can use up the available oxygen shockingly fast.
Our second invisible killer is a flammable atmosphere. This is basically like working inside a bomb that just hasn't been lit yet. And all it takes is one tiny spark, from a tool, from static electricity, from flipping a switch, to trigger a catastrophic explosion.
Now, for a gas to actually ignite, it needs the perfect fuel-to-air mix. This is called the explosive range. On one end, you have the lower explosive limit, or LEL. That's the minimum amount of gas needed to catch fire.
Any less and the mixture is what we call too lean. On the other hand is the upper explosive limit, or UEL. That's the maximum amount. Any more than that in the mixture is too rich, not enough oxygen to burn. The real danger zone is that sweet spot right in between.
And here is the single most crucial point about this. OSHA has a zero-tolerance policy. Your gas monitor doesn't just measure the amount of gas, it tells you how close you are to an explosion. It reads the percentage of the LEL. So if that meter alarms and reads 10% LEL, it means you are already 10% of the way to a blast. That's the signal. Alarms go off and you get out immediately. There is absolutely no margin for error here.
Okay, our third and final category of invisible killers, toxic atmospheres. These are the poisons. Unlike oxygen deficiency that just suffocates you, these gases actively attack your body. And a lot of them, well, they're masters of deception. Let's talk about the most infamous of these, hydrogen sulfide, H2S. At really low levels, you get that classic rotten egg smell. But that smell is a trap, a deadly one. Look at this chart. At 100 parts per million, your sense of smell literally just shuts down. It's called olfactory fatigue. Your brain stops getting the danger signal, so you think the gas is gone, but it's not. It's getting worse. As the concentration climbs, it causes instant collapse, what they call knockdown, and then death. I'm gonna say this as clearly as I can. Trusting your nose with H2S is a fatal mistake. And then there's the other common killer, carbon monoxide, or CO. It's totally odorless, totally colorless, and it's usually made by running things like gas engines or propane heaters in a space. Its danger is how it hijacks your own body. It binds to the hemoglobin in your blood, the very stuff that's supposed to carry oxygen, over 200 times more effectively than oxygen can. It basically kicks oxygen out of the way, starving your brain and your vital organs, all without a single warning sign until it's too late.
So if you can't trust your eyes, you can't trust your nose, and you can't trust how you feel, what can you trust? Only one thing: technology. A properly calibrated, properly used multi-gas monitor is the only sense you have that can see these invisible killers. Atmospheric testing isn't just a good idea, it is absolutely non-negotiable.
And you can't just flip on the monitor and stick it in the opening. There is a strict, mandatory order you have to follow. Oxygen first, always. Then, flammable gases. And finally, toxic gases. Now, why that exact order? It's because most flammable gas sensors actually need oxygen to work correctly. If the oxygen level is too low, that sensor could give you a false reading. It might read 0, tricking you into thinking a space is safe when it's actually a bomb waiting to go off.
Here's another crucial point. The air in a space isn't always perfectly mixed. Different gases have different weights. Some gases, like methane, are lighter than air, so they'll rise to the top. But others, like hydrogen sulfide and carbon dioxide, are heavier, and they'll sink right to the bottom. This is called stratification, and it's why you have to test the space at multiple levels, top, middle, and bottom, to get a complete, accurate picture of what you're dealing with. One reading from the opening just isn't enough. And this brings us right back to where we started, that shocking 60% statistic. Now that we understand just how invisible, how silent, and how deceptive these hazards really are, we can start to see why so many well-intentioned rescue attempts end in an even bigger tragedy. This is the tragic pattern that repeats itself over and over. An entrant goes down, there's no bang, no yelling, they just slump over. Their partner on the outside sees it happen, and their brain screams, "Get in there and help!" Adrenaline just floods their system, training goes out the window, rational thought has gone. They scramble down that ladder, right into the exact same deadly atmosphere that took down their friend, and they become the second victim.
And look, this isn't just a theory. This is a direct quote from a real-world fatality report on an oil rig. A diver's attendant collapsed. The supervisor saw it, and on pure impulse, climbed down the ladder after him without breathing apparatus. He collapsed before he could even get to the first victim. Both of them died. It happens time and time again.
And this is exactly why OSHA is so strict about rescue plans. The number one rule is that the best, safest rescue is one where nobody else has to go into the dangerous space. It's called non-entry rescue. It means every single person going in wears a harness attached to a retrieval line, so if they go down, the attendant outside can just use a winch to pull them to safety, without ever having to break the plane of that opening.
All of this brings us to the final piece of the safety puzzle. It's the one thing that ties all of these procedures together: the entry permit. I know, it's easy to look at it as just another piece of paperwork,
But a permit isn't bureaucracy. It's a formal, written checklist that proves you have identified and controlled every single known hazard. It is your license to enter safely.
A proper permit is like a pre-flight checklist for a pilot. It identifies the space and the job. It lists every single person involved in their role. And most importantly, it documents the hazards you found and the results of your atmospheric tests. It confirms your rescue plan is ready to go, and everyone knows who to call. Filling this out forces you to stop, to think, and to verify every single safety step. It is the final gatekeeper between you and a potentially lethal environment.
If you want to stay on top of critical safety topics just like this one, make sure you subscribe to HSE Study. We put out explainers like this to help keep you and your team informed and safe on the job.
So we'll leave you with this question. Now that you know the hazards are invisible, now that you know your senses will fail you, and that instinct can be a death sentence, what is the single most important change or verification you will personally make to your procedure before the next time you or your crew has to enter a confined space? Think about it, talk about it with your team, and most importantly, do it. Stay safe out there.